Welcome to the Payments Leaders Summit podcast, where the brightest minds and trailblazers in the payments industry come together to share insights, strategies, and the latest innovations shaping the future of finance.
Keli, it's great to see you again, and it's great to see you looking so well here at the Payments Leaders Summit in London. Maybe just for the audience, perhaps maybe just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, your history, and what you're doing at Virgin Atlantic.
Thanks, Sarah. So my name's Keli Sandeman. I'm the head of payments at Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Atlantic Holidays. I have responsibility for a small but perfectly formed team where we look after everything from financial contracts with acquirers and alternative payment providers, and also technical contracts as well for gateways, orchestrators, etc., globally throughout the world.
Fantastic. And Virgin is a brand that we all know and we all love. How long have you been with Virgin?
So I've actually been with Virgin, it will be coming up for 3 years in January. So I joined kind of right at the end of the pandemic, so much so that actually we weren't even flying to the US, and bearing in mind the US borders were closed for 600 days. So it was a pretty joyous day when we reflew back there, and it meant that payments were back on track again and we could start looking towards the future.
Fantastic. So thinking about that future, Virgin has, as I say, a wonderful brand in the industry, right? Your customers are repeat customers. How important is choice for your customers when you think about the travellers, you think about holiday makers, you think about those that travel with you? How important is it that they have choice and variety of choice?
I think, our motto is, we want to be the most loved travel company, and that ethos runs through every part of the organisation, and it's not just a motto. So we do live and die by it every day. So for us, giving payment choice is just part of that delight in the customer. So I've always said, if you remember how you pay, then you've done something wrong. It should be pretty seamless. But equally at the same time, it's important that we give them the choice. It's important that we remember not everyone pays how me or my colleagues want to pay. And actually, as I say, we deal with a diverse from countries and age ranges, etc., set of customers. So we need to appreciate that, how we operate in the UK or how we operate in the US or, South Africa or, one of our other markets, we need to be, very mindful of how different people want to pay and make sure we meet those needs.
Fantastic. And how do you do that as a payments team, right? Because, as I say, you turn up at the airport, you see the Virgin brand, you know what to expect. But on the website, you've got people visiting you randomly, right? So they'll be searching you, looking out to see whether or not you've got the holidays that they want, you've got the flight and locations that they're looking to travel to. But how do you make sure that you capture them rather than going to perhaps with one of your competitors?
Yes, I think we're on a journey, and pardon the pun, but, we are on a journey and we're at the early stages of that. We are building our foundations. As I said, we came out of COVID, it was the best part of a couple of years where we weren't operating any flights. And it's taken us some time to get our strength back, is the way I describe it. And as part of that, we've moved to a new orchestration platform. So we had some challenges where one of our old suppliers was sunsetting their gateway. So we had to do something pretty quickly about it. But that orchestration platform is the foundation, as I see it, to just build upon more and more payment options for our customers. So we've started that journey now. We've started with a new re-platform on our website. We are adding on what I call table stake type payments. So we're adding on Apple Pay and Google Pay. We're putting PayPal across all the different channels. Before you could only use it on certain flights, but actually now it'll be eventually across our flights and our holiday business. And that's our, that's given us our superb foundation to build upon, and then start putting more local payment methods on top of that, to be able to offer new payments such as open banking. We're really keen to give customers the opportunity to directly transfer from their bank, things like buy now, pay later. We know sometimes people maybe want to increase their experience, maybe go a better class of cabin, up their hotel, 3-star to a 4-star hotel, maybe stay a few extra days longer, but actually don't have the cash to afford that here and now. So offering buy now, pay later options will enable us to, give them their dream holiday or their dream flight, but in an affordable manner.
Fantastic. So it sounds like a pretty big transformation journey that you guys are on.
For somebody who works in payments, it's an absolute dream, really, because it felt like when we started, we had a bit of a blank canvas. Very, very supportive organisation. And, as I said before, we are very customer centric. So actually, if we can improve or change the way that we take those payments, then actually the business is fully supportive of us doing that. That aside, airline and aviation technology is not the most up to date. We don't just sell our own solutions, our own products, our own holidays, our own flights, but we have code shares, we sell third party, we will sell insurance, for example, through our website as well. So all of these things, we need to work with different technology partners. And that means that things that, are on your wish list may just take a little longer than I would ideally like.
Yeah, the joys of prioritization, right? So how do you guys take a strategy, which you've obviously crafted and you're working through and you've already started by the sound of things? How do you take that strategy and then decide what is a priority? And then once you've decided on those priorities, how do you manage the internal stakeholders? Because that can often be part of a delightful challenge, right?
It is actually very, very interesting. And I think the biggest part of my challenge so far has been managing those internal stakeholders. We have some, as I said, we've got legacy systems, legacy processes that we have to manage. So we have to make sure that we get the buy-in from several departments. That will be treasury, it will be finance, it will be revenue accounting, it will be our digital teams, our e-com teams, our support teams as well, people who are supporting the operation 24/7. So we do need to make sure that we get them on board. The other part that I personally found quite challenging is priorities change. You set yourself out on a journey, you have a strategy, and then something will come along. For us, quite often it's a new route. We go to a new destination. That new destination may have a currency that we don't offer today, so we have to do some development to get that new currency on board. It could well be that it's a country that has a particular payment type, that without that payment type, again, we're not going to succeed and that route won't be successful. So we do find that we have to quite often pivot as well. And in terms of sort of priorities, we have to look at that, return on investment and how long something's going to take to do. Our systems are very card-based. They are designed for 15 or 16 digits. They're designed to receive back an authorization code and accept or decline. So when we start to look at new payment methods that don't have the same messaging, we have to work out how do we digest that into our systems? How do we carry that payment method across that ticketing? How do we let our partners know that we've taken that payment successfully and they can go and issue that ticket? Because, we could be letting somebody get on a flight and we don't receive their funds. So, those challenges and that pivoting is absolutely key for us. And we have found over the last couple of years, we had a roadmap, we were following that, and then something happens, we maybe stopped doing a route. We did something different. We brought on a new airline partner, for example. Another part of the business gave us a challenge that we had to deal with. And, we have to react to that. Legislation changes, scheme changes, mandates, etc. All of these things can be thrown at us and they can stop us on our journey, for a small period of time, and then we have to get back on again.
Exactly. Not necessarily stop you, just slow you down a little bit, right?
Sometimes it feels like it does stop us in our tracks, but you're right. All we do is just push that date further out for delivery.
Exactly. So you mentioned, you're very much a global organisation, so you definitely think global, but you have to act locally. You talked about currencies, you talked about specific payment methods. And I guess your strategy, you work with a number of partners to be able to achieve that in the market. How do you manage those partners and make sure that you're getting not only the best value, but they also are underpinned by the same values that you have at Virgin?
I think we've worked really closely, and sometimes that word partnership can be overused, but actually, I've mentioned before, we're a really small team. There's 4 of us in our payments team, and we manage upwards of 30 suppliers at the moment around the world. So we do need people who work with us and support us and on that journey with us as well. And I say it does quite often sound like a bit of a cliche, but we rely on those suppliers to help and support us. And new suppliers come in and we get them to support us with business cases, help us to understand the return on investment. We get them to buy into us and we buy back into them. So it is really, really key. And again, we have to understand that being a small team, we have to beg, borrow, grovel to get resource from around the business. We quite often piggyback on other projects. So if our e-com team are doing something or our digital team are doing something, we just, kindly ask if they could slide a little payments project in there as well. So we do feel like we're going cap in hand quite often, but, to get the work done. But there is a mutual goal for everybody. If we're improving our website, if we're trying to improve our sales on the website, then actually without payments behind it, it's not going to work. We need a solid, stable solution to be able to support them in their business goals too.
Yeah, and if you're not bringing the revenues in, right, that's a big challenge for the organisation.
It is, and I always think, payments is quite underrated. Nobody knows who we are until it goes down, and then they come and find you very, very quickly.
Oh, yes.
And expect you to sort it. So yeah, it's we are the forgotten team quite often, and I've said it before, but and I don't want to overplay the part of payments, but if we don't take the money, then there is no business. So without us, it does sort of fall down quite quickly.
It's a very large cog and a very large wheel, but a very important cog nonetheless. So as you think about the future, right, from forward, you've got your transformation agenda, you've delivered on it all, the stakeholders are delighted, the shareholders are even happier, the teams have expanded. What's next in terms of Virgin Atlantic's plans for 5 years down the track? So knowing how much the payments landscape pivots and changes, where do you see the organisation in 5 years' time?
Oh, if only we had that crystal ball, that would be amazing, wouldn't it, really? Because as where were we 5 years ago? And, I'm one of these massive believers that, it's quite often things take a while to take hold, but actually COVID did do us a huge favour in payments, that, adoption of new payment types and different ways of paying and things that people felt unsure about, suddenly they had no choice and they just did, and they carried on adopting it afterwards. So, where we'll be in 5 years' time, who knows? We've got quite ambitious plans already now. I think we talked about the foundation with our orchestration platform. I want us to be able to optimize, get the best possible authorization rates, be able to route in the most cost-effective manners as well. We appreciate that a huge proportion of our payments costs are fixed. We can't change them, but actually what we can do is be very clever and very sensible about how we route transactions, how we shift to maybe more cost effective payment methods as well, how we increase that choice to give customers the opportunity to up their own transaction values, so increasing our basket sizes. So I think we can support the business. We sit within a commercial function. I do believe we are a revenue driver. We're not just a service, we're not just a function. And I'd like to see us being able to be more accountable for some of those revenue areas of the business.
Fantastic. So if you think about your own personal background, you've been in the payments industry a long time, right? I think we share some blood over the years as well, right, Keli? So when I think about your aspirations, your thoughts, what excites you about the future, about payments. We've been here at the Payments Leaders Summit all day so far, hearing about some of the innovations that's coming through, meeting some of the disruptors that are driving that change within the organisation. What excites you the most about the future?
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do call myself a payment geek, and I possibly wouldn't want to be stood next to me at a party every now and then. But I am really, really excited for the future. I think as you go around the world and you see different payment methods, even when I look at my own family, I have children in their 20s, they have different payment habits to me. My parents have different payment habits to me. I think, the one thing we have to realise is that we are all not the same. We shouldn't have preconceived ideas about, what type of person is going to make a payment, with which particular method. Who knows what is around the corner? I think some of the things that we thought would come in a few years ago have never materialised, and other stuff that we thought was going to come and go in a flash of a pan is still around and gaining strength. So I'm not sure exactly where it will be in 5 years' time, but what I'd like to think is that we have a very stable, customer-centric payment solution that just works without us having to do anything at Virgin Atlantic. And that nobody ever has to find us in the corner to say it's gone down.
That's a wonderful world, right, that you've described there. So conversely, the flip side of that then, as a payments geek, right, affectionately known, what scares you the most about the payments industry and where we're going generally as a either as a service provider or indeed as a merchant?
I think the danger is the more and more we rely on technology, we forget to know what to do when it goes down. So I think, we've moved into the world where everything is pretty seamless. We are used to things being, minimal clicks, if not one click. We don't, tap to pay, kind of my cards are all stored. I go into my phone to make a payment and all my numbers are there stored already. I don't have to remember, I don't have to do anything. And I guess my fear is that the more we rely on technology, if something happens, we find that everything grinds to a great halt. I think we've said before, who carries cash any longer? What do you do when something goes down? We talked this morning, you talked about the good old zip-zap machines. We did have, in those days when you were relying on quite, immature technology, we had the backup. I think the danger is now we don't necessarily have that backup. A lot of us people are moving to orchestration platforms. We may be multi-acquired, we may have multi-payment types at the back end of it, but your reliance on that front-end technology is back in the hands of one organisation. So I think I always say to people, the one thing that keeps me awake at night is payments going down, is that phone call at 3:00 in the morning of what are you going to do? And I think we can all cope with half an hour, but you start to think if it goes on any longer than that, really, what are we going to do? So I think that is the one thing that scares me slightly, is how do we mitigate that? How do we overcome that? And, how do we keep going in the eventuality of, some kind of disaster?
Those dependencies, right, of which sometimes we have very little control over, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, to mitigate.
Yeah.
So just to close us out then, Keli, if we think about the future, we've talked about the journey that Virgin Atlantic are on. Sounds very, very exciting. In terms of kind of maybe guidance to other merchants in a similar situation that are going through that transformation, orchestration is the buzzword here again this year.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about the orchestration. What advice and guidance can you give to maybe competitors or anybody else in the environment that are looking at orchestration right now, thinking, how do we take this forward? You've obviously gone part way, which is great. Talk us through those deciding factors. Talk us through those kind of thought process that you went through and what guidance you would share with others.
I think it's an absolute minefield out there. There are new providers popping up all over the place at the moment, and I think it's quite easy to get overwhelmed. I use the phrase quite often, you don't know what you don't know. And, you ask the question, where do we see ourselves in 5 years' time? And I find that very difficult to answer. So actually, how do I know when I'm selecting my next stage of my strategy, what I'm going to need for now and the future, and making sure that it's the right supplier for the organisation, for our customers, and for the team that we have to work with as well. That's quite key for us. So I think it's, what looks relatively simple on paper, when you try and translate that into a project and run it, it's never that simple. Everything takes 3 times as long as you think it's going to take as well. And it's a job that's never really ever done. As I said, I'm a payments geek. I've worked in payments a long time. I always say to people, they're preaching to the choir, because I do, I get it and I understand all those benefits, but actually trying to put those all in practice and make sure that, you're optimizing your routing, you're looking at your costs, your kind of, the timeouts, what's going on. It's a never ending job, and, you're never probably going to hit perfection. So my view is, every time we take a step forward, every time a job becomes a little bit easier, every time, we save some costs, I take all the small wins as we go, and just accept it's never going to be a completed job.
No, that's for sure. What do they say? Change is not an event, it's a process.
Definitely.
So with that, Keli, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. I really do wish you and the team all the very best with the transformation journey at Virgin Atlantic.
Thank you very much.